really, if it wasn't for Palestine, this would go down in history, I think, as the most boring election of all time. The Labour Party are deliberately keeping it boring because they are offering no hope in any shape or form. And they want to keep a sort of boring campaign because they want to see the Tories self-destruct and the vote come for them. So it's a boring campaign in that sense. But yet, as all of us will know, the horrors that are taking part in Gaza are continuing. The use of American troops and the use or misuse of aid convoys last week to release hostages, but also to kill hundreds of Palestinians in the process is just the latest example of what is going on. And so the first thing to say is that we have an election which is overwhelmingly boring in the sort of topics that are being taken. And yet the key political issue for all of us, and the key political issue which has shaped the last few months in politics in Britain and across the world, has been the case of Palestine, and that continues. And there's almost a gap between the two of them. And it's our job really to sort of bridge that gap and bring these two things together. Now, to take us back a little bit, so for those that don't know, I was a councillor for 10 years from 2003 through to 2014. And at the end of that time, I thought my engagement with electoral politics was over. And from about October, November, comrades in Counter Fire were kidding me on that I was going to be standing for Parliament in Preston, and I was pushing that back. There was no way that I was going to do this. I'd done my time, if you like. But I think for all of us that were on those Palestinian demonstrations, things gradually did start to change around the November vote in Parliament. And out of that demand, no ceasefire, no vote, really took hold in the pro-Palestine networks. And it was out of that we started to see the emergence of some independents reflecting the no ceasefire, no vote. We won't vote for the politicians of the mainstream parties who have refused to vote for a ceasefire on Palestine, and we're going to try to build something outside that. Liane Mohammed was perhaps the first notable one, Andrew Feinstein, and in Preston, that pressure grew as well, to the extent that several prominent individuals from the Muslim community in Preston, from the Palestinian, pro-Palestinian movement, from Stop the War, started to ask me if I would consider standing. So we had a hustings in which we opened it up to anybody. I said that I would stand only if we had a proper hustings and that people could put their name forward. And we had a debate and we had a vote on it. And that took place in March when about 160 people came to a hustings and 154 roughly voted for me to be the candidate. I actually retired from work in March. So I retired on the Thursday, and by the Sunday, I was a prospective parliamentary candidate. So my retirement managed to be 2 days, I think. However, when we had the hustings, my pitch, if you like, was that, of course, we had to be part and parcel of the Palestine movement. We had come out and emerged from the Palestine movement. We were independent because we didn't have a political party that we could stand for in electoral terms, but we were not independent of the movement. We were part and parcel of that movement in that way. But the second thing that I made clear was that when we stood, we had to stand as Palestine Plus, because the general election will be fought on all manner of issues, from the cost of living crisis to the crisis in welfare, the crisis in the National Health Service, student loans and student debt, to pensions for older people. And we have to have a response to all those things. And as socialists, we do have a response to all of those questions. So, yep, it would focus on Palestine. It was out the Palestine movement, but it had to be Palestine Plus in that way. And I suppose I thought that we had March, April, May, June, July, August, September, October, maybe the election in November at the outside. So I was preparing for an October-November election. And obviously, like everybody else, was taken by surprise at the speed at which the election was announced. So a couple of things that come out of that. So the first one is that the independents, despite our best efforts to try and go through hustings and open them up. The problem with being an independent as opposed to having a party or a network label is that anybody can stand as an independent. And now in Preston, there are 10 candidates and there are 2 independents. The other independent is independent is a prominent millionaire Muslim businessman who is standing against me and whose basic campaign is not to target the Labour Party, but to target myself. If you are a friend of mine on Facebook, you'll notice that yesterday I had to deactivate my Facebook and will do so for the duration because they were basically hiring people to troll through my Facebook and it was getting quite dirty in that way. So there is now 10 candidates for the people of Preston to vote for. Let me just give you a little bit about the geography or the political geography of Preston. We have a Labour MP with a 12,000 majority, but that 12,000 majority was on 20,000 votes. The Tories were second last time on 8,000. The reason the voting was quite low was because it is quite a big political constituency, but the turnout is better than Sunderland's, but it's not been particularly good over the last few elections. And that's a reflection of the fact that the sitting MP has been there for 25 years. He's never seen in Preston. Nobody knows where his office is. He consistently votes for the Labour whip. He was pro-Iraq war. He was pro-bombing in Libya, Syria. He is he's refused to vote for ceasefire in Palestine. He is dyed-in-the-wool, right-wing New Labour and doesn't really offer anything for the people of Preston. So the voting returns in Preston, going from our incredibly safe Labour seat under the left-wing MP, Audrey Wise, has gradually declined and the turnout is really quite low now. So it's 20,000, it's a 12,000 majority. The thing that makes it interesting is that the potential Muslim vote in Preston is 17,000. I say potential, that's because those who are over 18 and eligible to potentially vote is 17,000. But actually, it's about 14,500 have registered. So one of the things that we have got ongoing is a voter registration drive to try and drive those things up. In Preston, all the mosques, as much as they can, are broadly supportive. I'm being very careful in case people are recording this because mosques, of course, are not allowed to endorse any individual because of their charitable status. But we have gotten a fantastically good relationship with all the mosques and all the religious leaders in the Muslim community. But we can't win on Muslim votes alone. And we are also, of course, working in the white working class parts of Preston. And what's really interesting in the white working class parts of Preston is this. I have now walked in parts of Preston that I really didn't know existed. My steps are up to about 30,000 a day. If I don't win the election, I'm going to set up a business to challenge Weight Watchers. It's called the General Election Diet, where you just walk forever and put leaflets through people's doors. But in the big white working class areas of Preston, today I have seen one Labour poster, only one. In talking in the doors, I have found some Labour voters, 3. I have found lots of people who don't know, and a lot of people who say that they're not voting for any of the parties, which has actually been our in. And the in the white working class areas has really been to start off by saying that we are standing because the political establishment doesn't listen to us. They're not around. They turn up once every 5 years. We've got an MP who's been here for 25 years. Nobody knows who he is. Nobody knows where his office is. He takes us all for granted. He isn't even really campaigning particularly hard at this point in time. And that shows disdain for his working class voters. And that gets a huge level of support and agreement. And then we've got to talk about how he doesn't represent us, because he doesn't represent us around austerity, around NHS, or around Gaza. And of course, the question of Gaza is important in white communities as well. It's maybe not the issue, whereas in the Muslim community in Preston, it is the issue, but it is certainly one of a number of issues that there are huge concerns about. And there are lots of white voters who are voting for me who say that Gaza is a key thing for them. And that's not a surprise. 75% of the population are in favour of an immediate of an immediate ceasefire. So last couple of points, just as I finish then. So the thing about targeting the political establishment is a really good way in for us. And as the left, we should be the representatives and the voice of those who want to speak for against the political establishment and the way that they treat us. But it's also then vitally important that we get really good votes as independents and on the left across Britain, because we want to be the ones who speak out against the political establishment and what they're doing and how they don't take it seriously and how they're implementing cuts and privatisation. Because if we're not careful, the right will have mis-arguments in saying that the political establishment are at the heart of their problems and it's all down to migration and migrants, etc., etc. So we have to get good votes here to make sure that that's a left-wing argument and it's not adapted by the far right in that way. And the final thing is that I think we are in a really good position in Preston to get a really good vote. And now comes my plea, because each and every one of you who's on this call tonight can make a difference in that campaign. And perhaps as we go into the discussion, we can talk about how you can make a difference in Preston and for the independents, and everything that you do between now and the 4th of July, every vote that you garner for the left between now and the 4th of July puts us in a better and a stronger position to shape the arguments on the 5th of July when Labour comes in and continues with cuts, privatisation and austerity.